Generally, I'm not a cat person. I mean, I'm not. I was in my grandma's hometown last summer, a small village somewhere in Greece, doesn't matter where. I was sitting around being lazy on the front porch with my dogs, and I heard kittens. Kitten cry is a distinct, crippling sound that pierces your ears all the way to your brain, landing in that part of the brain that controls guilt. I made my way across the street, and that's where I saw her and her two brothers. 3 young kittens, all alone, hungry, confused, crying for someone to hear them. And the first person that hears them and goes to them immediately becomes their new mother. That person in that occasion last summer was me. Of the 3, she was the tiniest and the grumpiest one. As I started feeding them, she would sit in the corner and wait for the boys to jump on the food like starving predators, looking at them all composed and full of self-control, as if she was thinking, I'm too much of a princess to behave otherwise. And of the 3, she was the sickest. Aside from the fact that deworming her was a life-threatening task, while it was just a walk in the park for her brothers, I had to take her to the vet a couple of times for respiratory infections and eye infections and a cough that just sounded bad. And then came the even more life-threatening task of giving her her meds twice a day. That was funny. For someone watching from a distance, it must have looked like Hercules fighting the Nemean lion. I have to be honest, I didn't like her. I preferred her two brothers. I spent about 2-3 weeks there with them, fed them twice a day, and mainly spent most of my time just watching them being watched by my dog, who was obsessed with them. She has a kitten fetish of some sort. She always watches kittens. She likes to watch. I left for the city, leaving food for them to my aunt. They were already of an age that survival on the street was possible, although my heart did break a bit. I came back in September, left again, came back in October, left again, came back in November. And by November, she was the only one left. Her one brother had disappeared during a storm, and her other brother had moved a couple of blocks down because there's only room for one male cat in each neighborhood, and that place was already taken. Funny, the one I liked less was the one that got to stay around. She had a home for her there, kind of, waiting outside my aunt's door for food or some leftovers to come, sleeping on the table and just surviving on her own, basically. She was just 6-7 months old, and I guess being born a stray and living as a stray, she had to toughen up. She was tough to begin with, to be honest. She looked so not needy. She had the attitude of, I'm going to be here now. This is me. I'm important to myself. She was still so tiny. I spayed her that November. She looked so small, you wouldn't even believe she had a uterus to remove. I neutered her brother too, and 3-4 more stray cats, the ones I could catch and put in the box, just making sure that no more kittens like her would be coming my way the next year. In November, I spent a month there with my dogs. A puppy I rescued, 2 more dogs I rescued, the stray cats, and her. Vicious, antisocial, little grumpy, round-faced, gorgeous cutie pie. Her first nickname was Grumpy, actually. Before she even had a name, she had a nickname. She was just sit there, looking inside, all self-absorbed, and oh God, she was freaking cute. She was very cute. Within that month, she went from antisocial to semi-social. She suffered from chronic bronchitis, so our trips to the vet were frequent. Within a month, she went from reacting like a hyena every time I would try to give her medicine to just tolerating it with a contempt of the cat she would grow up to be. I don't know how it happened, but gradually she started mingling. I would take my dogs on a last walk in the garden every night, and she would follow us from a distance, growling and purring at the same time. Oh, she had the loudest purr I had ever heard. I mean, the loudest. It's loud. She never came into the house on her own. As the temperatures were dropping, I would pick her up, bring her in the house, and place her in a blanket on the sofa, and she would stay there and purr, looking around with the attitude of the entitled. My kitten fetishist dog was obsessed with her, and I mean obsessed. For a couple of weeks, all I did was watch her watch that kitten. And although Grumpy was being all grumpy about being watched, in a way, I think she connected the feeling of being watched with the comfort of a home. It was around this time when I noticed she was obsessed with food. She would eat like there's no tomorrow, and every time I would feed the other stray, she would run there too and growl and try to eat their food as well. It was fun, that month. And then came the moment of return. I wrote down, well, in my mind, the pros and cons of just leaving her there. That was her home, in a way, the only home she knew. My aunt would feed her leftovers and occasionally some kibble. She would hunt. She was spayed, dewormed. The area was pretty much safe. She would be fine there. These were all the pros. There was only one issue. If I returned in a month or 2 or 6 and she wasn't there anymore, would I be able to live with it? And I decided that no. So Grumpy came to Athens with us. My apartment was the second home she knew. Coming in, I placed her in the spare bathroom like I do with all kittens. It's big enough, it's safe, and it gives them time to adjust. An hour later, I opened the door and she had already explored the entire bathroom. She was waiting at the door to see what else is there. She never went back to the bathroom again. She didn't need it. She explored the apartment with the attitude of a self-entitled, self-confident, composed little kitten she was. Within hours, she had met everyone. She had found all places a cat can sit comfortably on. She would run for food. She would use the litter box. That was it. She adjusted in no time. It was as if she already knew what to do and what not to do. It was weird for a cat. That lockdown lasted 6 months. It had already begun when we came to the city. So there we were, spending the winter in the apartment. Me, the dogs, the cats, and her. And although she immediately adjusted, there was always something about her that made her look off. Like the odd one out, you know? I don't know exactly what it was. My staring dog stopped staring at her once she was no longer of kitten size. With my cats, she still has a love and hate relationship. Those two are a duo. They're their own thing, and she knew it. Sometimes she mingled, sometimes she didn't. Despite being in a constant state of frenemies, basically, these two cats are the only cat friends she's ever had. They won't let her snooze with them, although she makes it look as if she's the one who doesn't want to come near them anyway. Life in the apartment was easy with her. From the first day. It was as if there was no third cat around, really, except dinner time. She loves food, and I loved having a cat that loves food. The only thing I had to protect from her were papers, all sorts of papers, from bills to money to photos. She loved to shred paper, and sometimes as I watched her shred and shred and shred all sorts of old papers I would let her have, I often wondered if she was bored. I took her from a life in the country where she had a huge territory to run around, trees to climb and bugs to chase, and confided her in an apartment only to basically spare me the headache of never seeing her again. Was I right? Had I chosen the right life for her? Or not? Despite her growing, she remained a small cat. And somewhere around that winter, the nickname Grumpy gave its place to Stumpy. Stumpy became Midget, and Midget became Bridget. From that 60s song, Bridget the Midget, the Queen of the Blues. It suits her. Well, she may be small, just 2 feet tall, but if you give her half a chance, she'll pin you to the wall. That's her. She's fearless. After 6 months of lockdown around spring, the country started opening up. So I left for my hometown. I took my dogs, left the cats back home with a friend, like I always did. After 6 whole months, it was the first time she would be home alone, with the cats, but without me, without our tedious apartment routine that I'm not even sure she enjoyed. I was gone for a few days, and I came back to find all 3 cats just fine. Or that's what I thought. That night, the first night I was back, she didn't eat. I had never seen her not eat. The next morning, she didn't eat either. And the same afternoon, we were at the vet, where I insisted that she stayed on IV because there was something very wrong with her. She was dying. That cat cannot not eat. She must be very sick or very grumpy. Her tests were fine. I picked her up a couple of days later and made an effort of spending at least half an hour every day only with her. She started eating again. She went back to being herself. And I became convinced that she had stopped eating because I had left her. And cats do that, by the way, and it can kill them. And that cat that will not eat because you've been away and she misses you might not be the cuddly, soft cat that sleeps by your side 24/7. That independent, grumpy, self-pretentious cat that seems to not have a care in the world might be the one that suffers in your absence, no matter how much she seems to ignore your presence. The decision to take her with me next time instead of leaving her behind was a calculated risk. We normally don't do that with cats. And I am someone who knows nothing about cats. But I do know her, and somehow I trust her. That first trip with her in the car among the dogs was the longest of my life. My brain was about to explode. Maybe I was making a huge mistake. Maybe not. Was I putting her in great risk? Was I stressing her? Was I ruining everyone's weekend? We finally arrived at the place where I had first met her, the place where she was born and where she grew up. I figured if I was going to be taking this cat with me from now on, I would better start from that place she knew. See how she reacts. And Bridget reacted as she had reacted when I first brought her to the city. She explored the place with all its possibilities, and she figured out, or she remembered again, how to live her life in the country. She owned the place. She climbed the tree. She went to the toilet outside in the garden. She came to the kitchen for food, and she slept all night on the couch. Oh. Since then, we've traveled and traveled together. She puts her countryside collar on with a bell. She gets in the box and comes out to live a life with me and the dogs wherever we go. And when she's back home to Athens, she goes back to her apartment routine, shredding papers, occasionally sleeping on my head, biting my lips and licking my nose. She's not the cuddly type. In fact, she's so not cuddly that she licks herself clean non-stop whenever I smoosh her, desperately trying to remove my smell off of her. And that pisses me off so much that as a revenge tactic, I kiss her on places where it's difficult for her to clean up after, and I sit and watch her and laugh. I'd like to say that the countryside suits her, but then she adjusts so well to the life in the apartment that she becomes a perfect indoor cat. I sit and watch her for hours when she goes out exploring in the garden, hunting, praying, smelling. Oh God, she's gorgeous. She looks like a big cat out in the jungle. She's so good on the eyes. But I also sit and stare at her when she's snoozing on the couch among the soft blankets. She's a soft furball with a wild side that is inside her at all times. And all of the traits of her personality I love and I admire. And I really like to watch. It's been about a year now since I made that decision to take her to the city with me. I questioned that decision many times for the first months. I worked hard to keep this cat happy, but also safe, and I like to think that by now I finally have it figured out. She's at home when she's in the apartment, she's at home when she's in that cottage she grew up in, she's at home here and there and everywhere, so I guess she's at home when she's with me. With her bad eye forever damaged from a virus she had caught as a stray kitten, an eye that gives her that unique look that she carries around like a badge of honor from her tough past. I think it's fair to say that this stray kitten has finally figured out where her home is. It's with me. I am her home. And I've got the scratches on my face to prove it.